The words sliced through me sharper than any blade in my operating room. You are nothing but a mistake, Bella, a selfish aberration that's going to ruin my daughter's life and our family name. Mila's mother Eleanor stood there in their elegant Chicago dining room, her face twisted in disgust, as the rest of the family watched in stunned silence. I felt my chest tighten, the wine glass in my hand suddenly heavy enough to drop. Mila sat beside me, her fingers brushing mine under the table, but she said nothing, her eyes fixed on the polished wood as if the pattern could erase the moment. 2 years earlier I had met Mila at a hospital fundraiser in downtown Chicago, where I was presenting on advances in cardiothoracic surgery. She was the marketing executive handling the event, sleek in a black dress with a smile that cut through the crowded room like sunlight. We talked about everything and nothing, her quick laugh pulling me in. By the end of the night we exchanged numbers, and within weeks secret coffee dates turned into long walks along Lake Michigan, where she confessed how her conservative family never truly accepted her. I told her about my own struggles growing up with a single mom who worked double shifts to put me through medical school, and how becoming a surgeon felt like the only way to prove I could control chaos. Our connection was instant and terrifying because it felt right in a world that often said it was wrong. We kept things quiet at first, stolen weekends in my apartment, overlooking the city skyline, late night talks about dreams and fears. Mila introduced me to her world gradually, her younger sister, who was supportive, her father who was distant but polite. But Eleanor was different from the start, her questions laced with suspicion. Why aren't you married, Bella, at 32? What about children? I answered honestly, but the air grew thick each time. Mila and I decided to come out together at the family dinner that night, thinking love would be enough. We were wrong. After Eleanor's words, the room erupted. Her brother stood up, demanding I leave, calling it unnatural. Mila's father gripped the table edge, his knuckles white. Mila finally spoke, her voice breaking as she defended us, but the damage was done. I left that house with my heart in pieces, driving through the rain-soaked streets of Chicago, replaying every moment we had shared, wondering if I had been naive to believe our love could survive her family's walls. That night Mila came to my apartment, tears streaming as she apologized over and over. I held her close, but inside I felt the first crack in what we had built, the doubt that maybe I really was the mistake they claimed. The weeks that followed were a blur of whispered arguments and late shifts at the hospital, where I buried myself in surgeries to escape the pain. Mila tried to bridge the gap, visiting her family alone, pleading for understanding, but Eleanor remained unmoved, quoting scripture and family tradition as weapons. At work, subtle comments from colleagues who had heard rumors through the grapevine added to the weight, some questioning my focus, others offering pitying looks that stung worse than outright rejection. I questioned everything, my choices, my worth, the price of loving someone whose world pulled her in the opposite direction. Mila wrestled with guilt, her loyalty split between the woman she loved and the family that had raised her. One evening she broke down in my arms, admitting how torn she felt, how every visit home left her feeling like she was betraying someone. I listened, but the hurt lingered, a quiet fear that our love might demand sacrifices neither of us was ready to make. By the end of that first month, the tension had settled into a fragile routine. Mila spent more nights at my place, we avoided family gatherings and tried to rebuild what the dinner had shattered. Yet the shadow of Eleanor's words followed us into quiet moments, making every kiss feel like defiance. I threw myself deeper into my career, taking on complex cases that demanded all my focus, the operating room becoming my sanctuary, where decisions were clear, life or death with no room for doubt. Mila advanced in her marketing firm, landing a big campaign that kept her busy. But at night we talked about the future, a house, maybe adoption, one day, dreams that felt distant under the weight of reality. The social prejudices we faced in Chicago, a city that prided itself on progress, yet still whispered behind closed doors, only deepened our bond and our isolation. Friends distanced themselves, some citing discomfort, others simply fading away. We learned quickly who our real allies were, and the cost of authenticity in a world that still demanded conformity. As autumn turned to winter, the internal conflicts grew sharper. I found myself replaying the dinner in my mind, analyzing every expression, every word, searching for a way I could have changed the outcome. Mila confessed during one particularly raw conversation that part of her wondered if fighting was worth the pain it caused her parents, the sleepless nights her mother endured worrying about the family name. Her words cut deep, not because they were cruel, but because they revealed the depth of her struggle, the love for her family clashing with the love for me. I chose to stay silent that night, holding her instead, but the trade-off was clear. Every moment we stole together came with the price of her guilt, and my growing resentment toward a family that saw our happiness as a threat. The rhythm of our days became a tense dance of support and silence building towards something neither of us could yet name. The fallout from that dinner spread like cracks in ice. Mila's phone rang constantly, her sister calling with updates on how Eleanor had taken to bed with stress headaches, her father retreating into silence at work. I tried to focus on my patients, the steady beep of monitors and the precision of each incision grounding me when everything else felt unstable. One afternoon during a routine checkup, a colleague pulled me aside, his voice low with concern. "Heard about your situation, Bella. Family drama can affect performance, you know." I brushed it off, but the words lingered, feeding the voice in my head that echoed Eleanor's accusation. Was I really the mistake, disrupting not just Mila's life but my own carefully built career? Mila arrived at my apartment that evening, her eyes red from another heated call home. We argued for the first time, not with raised voices but with quiet, painful truths. She wanted to keep trying to change their minds. I wanted space to heal. "Why do we have to hide, Bella?" she asked, her hands trembling. "Because your mother made it clear what she thinks of me," I replied, the words tasting bitter. The confrontation left us both exhausted, lying side by side in silence, the city lights flickering through the window like distant stars we could never reach. That night I lay awake wondering if love meant enduring endless battles or knowing when to walk away. Mila turned to me, whispering promises of a future where we would be free. But I could hear the uncertainty in her voice, the internal war she fought daily between duty and desire. Weeks passed with small victories and deeper wounds. We attended a pride event in Millennium Park hand in hand for the first time in public, the cheers around us a temporary shield against the world. But back home the pressure mounted. Mila's family arranged a family meeting without me, demanding she attend alone. She came back shaken, describing how Eleanor had cried real tears, begging her to think of the grandchildren, the legacy, the normal life she deserved. The betrayal cut deep, not from Mila but from the system that taught her family that our love was a phase, a deviation to be corrected. At the hospital I faced my own subtle prejudices, a senior doctor questioning my promotion eligibility, hinting that personal issues could cloud judgment. I defended myself with facts and results, but the doubt crept in, making each surgery feel heavier. Mila and I grew closer in the quiet defiance, finding strength in shared meals, late-night drives along the lake, and the way her head fit perfectly on my shoulder. Yet the sacrifices mounted. She missed her niece's birthday party to avoid questions. I declined a speaking engagement to stay close during her low moments. The moral dilemmas piled up. Was it right to ask her to choose between family and me, or selfish to expect her to endure the ostracism? One evening after a particularly grueling day, I broke down in the locker room, the weight of being the outsider, the mistake pressing down until I could barely breathe. Mila found me there, pulling me into her arms, her own tears mixing with mine. We held each other, promising to fight, but deep down I knew the cost was mounting, every smile, every touch paid for with invisible scars. The social prejudices extended beyond family into our daily lives. At Mila's office, a coworker made a passing comment about alternative lifestyles that left her silent for days. I overheard nurses gossiping in the break room about doctors with complicated personal lives, their words laced with judgment that made my hands shake during the next procedure. We talked about it openly late into the night, dissecting the ways society still viewed us as less than, the way Eleanor's words had given permission for others to doubt us. Mila admitted the guilt ate at her, the fear that she was hurting her mother irreparably by choosing me. I listened, fighting my own anger, the desire to demand she cut ties clashing with the empathy I felt for her pain. The trade-off was clear: our love required constant negotiation, constant proof that it was worth the struggle. As the holidays approached, the tension peaked. Mila received an invitation to the family Christmas gathering with a note from Eleanor, explicitly stating my absence was preferred. She cried in my arms, torn between tradition and truth. I encouraged her to go, wanting to give her space, but inside the decision felt like another betrayal, another reminder that I was the outsider. That night, alone in my apartment, I stared at the city skyline, questioning every choice that had led me here, the decision to love openly, the hope that acceptance would come. The internal conflict raged: love versus self-preservation, family loyalty versus personal happiness. When Mila returned from the gathering, she was quieter than ever, the stories she shared painting a picture of forced smiles and veiled comments that left her questioning everything. We held each other tighter that night, but the cracks were widening, the price of our choices becoming impossible to ignore. The pressure from Mila's family intensified in the new year. Eleanor arranged a blind date for Mila with the son of a family friend, a successful lawyer, who represented everything they wanted: stability, tradition, normalcy. Mila told me about it over dinner, her voice hesitant as if the words themselves were a confession. I felt the betrayal like a punch to the gut, not because she went but because part of her considered it to ease the family tension. She swore it was just one dinner to appease them, but the doubt lingered, poisoning our evenings with unspoken accusations. I threw myself into back-to-back surgeries, the operating room the only place where my skills define me, not my heart. During that time I faced my own crisis at the hospital. A high-profile case went sideways, not due to error but because of the patient's complicated history, and the family demanded answers, pointing fingers at my personal life as a distraction. The inquiry cleared me, but the whispers followed me down the halls, making me question if Eleanor's label had tainted my reputation forever. Mila and I fought again, this time with raised voices, her defending the dinner as a necessary sacrifice, I accusing her of wavering. The argument ended with her storming out, leaving me alone with the silence and the fear that our love was fracturing under the weight of external forces. That night I walked the empty streets of Chicago, the cold wind mirroring the chill in my chest, replaying every moment of doubt, every compromise we had made. Mila returned the next day with flowers and apologies, explaining how the dinner had been awkward and empty, how it only confirmed her feelings for me. But the damage was done, the seed of mistrust planted. We tried to rebuild with therapy sessions and weekend getaways to the Wisconsin countryside where we could pretend the world outside didn't exist. Yet the internal conflicts raged on. Mila confessed during one session the guilt that kept her awake, the way her mother's tears haunted her dreams. I shared my own fears, the worry that I was holding her back from the life her family envisioned. The counselor helped us name the prejudices, the societal expectations that labeled our bond as less valid, but naming them didn't erase the pain. A major confrontation came when Mila's sister leaked private messages between Mila and me to Eleanor, hoping to force a reckoning. The resulting family blowout left Mila devastated, her sister claiming it was for her own good. I held Mila as she cried, the betrayal from within, her own blood cutting deeper than Eleanor's words ever could. In the aftermath we made a pact to prioritize each other, but the cost was high: Mila distancing herself from most of her family, me taking on extra shifts to avoid the emptiness at home. The moral dilemmas multiplied. Was it ethical to encourage her to cut ties, or cruel to watch her suffer in silence? We chose the middle path: limited contact, but the trade-off was constant anxiety, every ring of the phone a potential explosion. Socially, the prejudice followed us relentlessly. At a professional gala, a donor made a snide remark about modern relationships that left Mila pale. I defended us publicly for the first time, my voice steady despite the pounding heart. The moment felt empowering yet exhausting, the constant need to justify our existence wearing us down. Back home we talked long into the night about the awakening that was happening, the realization that love required not just courage but endurance. Mila began volunteering at an LGBTQ center, finding strength in community stories that mirrored ours. I supported her fully, but inside I wondered how much more we could endure before one of us broke. The rhythm of our life became a tense balance of hope and fear, each day a decision to keep fighting. By spring the relationship had settled into a new fragile normal. We celebrated small wins: a promotion for Mila, a successful complex surgery for me, but the undercurrent of doubt remained. One evening as we watched the sunset over the lake, Mila turned to me and said, "I choose you every day, even when it hurts." Her words should have brought peace, but they highlighted the price, the daily choice, the sacrifices we both made. I kissed her, knowing that the journey had changed us both, forging strength from pain, but also leaving scars that might never fully heal. The stage was set for the crisis that would test everything we had built. The call came at 3 in the morning, the kind that jolts you from sleep into full alert. It was Mila, her voice breaking. Mom collapsed, chest pain, they're rushing her to Chicago General. My heart stopped. I was the on-call cardiothoracic specialist that night, the one who would evaluate the case. As I drove through the empty streets, the irony hit me hard. The woman who had branded me a mistake now needed my expertise to survive. At the hospital, chaos reigned, the ER team stabilizing Eleanor for what looked like an acute aortic dissection, a life-threatening tear in the main artery. When I reviewed the scans, my hands went cold. It was her. The same face from that dinner, now pale and vulnerable on the gurney. Mila arrived moments later, her face streaked with tears, throwing herself into my arms in the hallway. "Bella, please, you have to save her." I held her, feeling the weight of every past conflict, the resentment, the love, the duty. The moral dilemma crashed over me like a wave. Professionally, I was bound by oath to treat any patient to the best of my ability. Personally, I wanted to walk away to let another surgeon take the case and spare myself the torture of holding her life in my hands. The team waited for my decision, the clock ticking. I chose to operate. Not for Eleanor but for Mila and for the principles that had defined my career. As I scrubbed in, the internal monologue raged: was this mercy or masochism, forgiveness or foolishness? In the tension was electric. The team moved with practiced efficiency, but they sensed my distraction the way my eyes lingered on the monitors showing Eleanor's weakening vitals. I made the incision with steady hands despite the storm inside, recalling every harsh word, every moment of rejection. Complications arose during the repair, a sudden bleed that tested my skill and resolve. I worked methodically, calling out orders, my mind split between the technical demands and the flashbacks to that dining room, the disgust in her eyes. Mila paced the waiting room, her family gathered in awkward silence, her father avoiding eye contact, her sister offering hollow comforts. The hours stretched, each minute a battle between my training and my pain. As the surgery progressed, I found unexpected clarity. Saving Eleanor wasn't about erasing the past but about choosing who I wanted to be: a doctor who rose above personal grudges, a woman who refused to let hate define her actions. The team exhaled when the repair held the monitors stabilizing into a steady rhythm. I stepped back, allowing the closing team to finish, my body exhausted, but my mind racing with what came next. In the recovery room, I faced Mila, her gratitude mixed with fear. "She's stable," I said, the words feeling both victory and burden. Her family hovered nearby, their expressions a mix of relief and discomfort knowing who had wielded the scalpel. The awakening began slowly, Eleanor still unconscious. But the air in the hospital shifted, the prejudices that had divided us now confronted by the undeniable fact that the mistake had just saved a life. The following days brought new confrontations. Mila's father approached me in the hallway, his voice gruff with reluctant thanks. I nodded, accepting it without warmth, the trade-off of professionalism over personal closure. Mila stayed by her mother's side, torn between relief and the resurfacing guilt. I visited only when necessary, checking charts, avoiding direct contact, but the proximity forced reflections on every choice we had made, the betrayals, the endurance, the quiet strength we had built. The social dynamics in the hospital shifted. Two colleagues who had whispered now offered nods of respect, the prejudice tempered by the visible success. Yet inside I wrestled with the cost. Was this redemption? Or just another layer of pain, prolonging a relationship that had already demanded too much? Eleanor woke on the third day, her eyes fluttering open to the beeping machines and the sight of Mila holding her hand. The first words were weak but clear. "Where am I?" Mila explained the surgery, the emergency, the doctor who had saved her. When Eleanor's gaze found me in the doorway, the recognition hit like a physical blow. "You." The single word carried every past accusation, but this time it was laced with confusion, not pure hate. I checked her vitals, professionally explaining the procedure in clinical terms, avoiding emotion. Inside the conflict raged. The woman who had called me a mistake now owed me her life. The power dynamic flipped in ways neither of us had imagined. The family gathered in shifts, creating tense silences broken by forced small talk. Mila's sister pulled me aside one afternoon, her voice low with apology for the leaked messages, the role she had played in deepening the rift. I accepted it because holding grudges served no one, but the internal wound remained. Mila and I stole moments in the cafeteria, her hand finding mine under the table, the romantic spark still there amid the chaos. Yet the drama escalated when Eleanor asked to speak with me alone. The conversation was halting, her thanking me through gritted teeth, admitting the fear that had driven her words, the worry for Mila's future in a world she saw as unforgiving. I listened without interrupting, the moral weight of her vulnerability pressing on me. Was forgiveness possible, or was this just survival guilt? Complications arose on day 5, a minor infection that required additional intervention. I led the response, my decision swift, ensure the team watching with renewed respect. During the procedure my mind wandered to the sacrifices we had all made, Eleanor, her rigid beliefs, Mila, her divided loyalties, I, my heart on the line. Post-procedure, Mila confronted her mother openly for the first time, detailing the pain, the isolation, the love that refused to die. Eleanor listened, tears in her eyes, the prejudices cracking under the reality of her survival. The family dynamics shifted subtly, her father offering a handshake that felt like a bridge, her sister mediating with cautious optimism. Yet the tensions remained high, every interaction a potential flashpoint testing our resolve. In quiet moments with Mila we reflected on the journey, the way the crisis had forced awakening on all sides. She admitted the betrayal of considering that blind date the moments she had wavered under pressure. I shared my doubts the nights I had considered walking away to protect my peace. Our conversations deepened the bond, strengthening through honesty, the price paid in tears, and time now yielding a more resilient love. The hospital became a microcosm of the larger social battles, colleagues sharing stories of their own struggles, prejudice, giving way to empathy in the face of shared humanity. I performed daily rounds on Eleanor, our exchanges growing less strained, her questions shifting from accusation to curiosity about my life, my work, my hopes. The change was gradual but real, the woman who had once seen me as a threat now seeing the hands that had mended her heart. The climax built as Eleanor prepared for discharge, the family debating future gatherings, inclusion versus tradition. Mila stood firm, declaring her choice, me, her life with me, the non-negotiable. I supported her silently, the internal debate raging. Was I enabling a permanent rift or standing for a love worth the cost? The night before discharge, we all gathered in the room, the air thick with unspoken truths. Eleanor looked at me directly, her voice steady. I was wrong about you, Bella. The words hung there, not full acceptance but a crack wide enough for light. The moment felt like victory, yet I knew the road ahead would demand more sacrifices, more choices between right and wrong in a world that still judged. Discharge day arrived with spring sunlight filtering through the hospital windows. Eleanor walked slowly to the car, her family surrounding her, the tension eased but not erased. Mila and I stood apart from the group, our hands brushing in silent solidarity, the romantic connection that had survived the storm now tempered by wisdom. As the cars pulled away, Mila turned to me, tears of relief mixing with uncertainty. We did it, Bella, we made it through. I nodded, pulling her close, the embrace a promise and a question all at once. The weeks that followed brought tentative steps toward normalcy, family dinners where my presence was tolerated, conversations that skirted old wounds but built new understanding. Eleanor never fully retracted her earlier views, but her actions showed a shift, small gestures like inviting me to a garden party, the quiet thanks in her eyes during follow-up visits. At work, my reputation soared, the surgery becoming a case study in the hospital, the prejudice I had faced fading under the weight of results. Mila thrived in her career, channeling the experience into campaigns supporting inclusive families, the awakening extending beyond our circle. We moved in together, officially the apartment filling with shared memories and plans for the future. A wedding, perhaps adoption, the dreams we had once whispered now spoken aloud. Yet the scars remained, the price each of us had paid, etched in late-night talks where doubt resurfaced, the moral dilemmas that lingered. Was it right to have operated knowing the history, or would refusing have made me the smaller person? The betrayals, the family pressure, the societal judgment had all shaped us into stronger versions, but at what cost to our peace? One evening months later, as we sat on the balcony overlooking the city, Eleanor called Mila to check in, the conversation light but meaningful. When Mila hung up, she turned to me smiling. Mom asked about you specifically. The moment felt like closure, but I knew true healing was ongoing, the prejudices running deep in society, and in hearts requiring constant vigilance. Our love had endured the ultimate test, emerging not unscathed but unbreakable, the decisions we made, the actions we took, defining not just our story, but the legacy we would leave. As Eleanor recovered, fully integrating slowly into our lives, I reflected on the journey, the shocking label that had once defined me now transformed by the unexpected role I played in her survival. In the end, when the woman who called me a mistake opened her eyes and whispered thanks, I had to ask myself, was forgiving her the right choice, or had love blinded me to the truth that some prejudices run too deep to ever truly heal?